Dear friends, welcome back to another episode of ProView. Thanks for all your feedbacks and your support to this channel. Today we have a special guest with us who taught me macro photography. Before that, let me invite Amit, my co-host.
Thank you, Mon sir. So again, looking forward for this session. I never worked with Uday, but I would definitely going to work with him in the near future. So welcome, Uday. Welcome to this episode of ProView.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Monsa.
joining, Uday. It's a privilege to have you here. Yeah, you being my guru in macro photography, it's our privilege to have you here in this show.
It's an honor, sir. So thanks for having me here. It's really an honor to be on this platform. I have seen your all the earlier episodes. They're just amazing. Okay, and the way you get inside the life of a photographer and show their early stages and all these things is just amazing. Like I think
Thank you.
like
Thank
it's
you.
it's going to help a lot of newcomers and who can learn from the people who are accomplished photographers. Definitely, it's really an honor to be here.
So, guys, Uday is a good friend of mine. He is a SAP architect engineer. He was blessed to be born in a beautiful place called Sirsi in Western Ghats. He picked up his camera 12 years back, and he says one day he watched a green white snake for 4 hours, patiently waiting to make its kill. That is what triggered the passion, the photography in Uday. Welcome, Uday.
Thank you so much, sir. Again.
Yeah. So Uday, you I think shoot a lot of different genres also in photography. Why macro?
This is a very interesting question, Amit. So I think like I will have to go a little bit back in my life to give you that insight. So what happened is like my dad was very much crazy about waterfalls. Okay, so as you know that Sirsi is surrounded by number of waterfalls and untouched waterfalls. So he was crazy about going to these places. And when I think if I'm not wrong, when I was around maybe 9 or 10 years old, he used to take me for those waterfalls, and then that kida started again. I think like in that time itself it started. So and on the go, like I started enjoying nature, and like my home was exactly surrounded by forest and plantations. So these guys like frogs, snakes, scorpions, and lot of insects, they are all like my neighbors. Okay, so they used to come inside. Sometimes when you open the bed in the night, you will see a snake or a frog. It's a common scene for me. Like it's not a very new thing. So I think like when I started watching them very closely, I think that made me to learn more about their lifestyle and all these things. So that's how it started. Initial, I think like for several years, maybe around 15-20 years, I only watched them. I did not really thought of photographing them. But at one point of time, I thought that like I need to show these things to world, so that like even others can enjoy what I really love to see.
Yeah. One good thing about macro Uday is unlike other genres, you don't have to take leaves, okay, from your work. You can actually manage that on the weekends also, right?
That's true. That's true. That's very much true, Amit. So I think like there is slightly a different view. So if you are very particular on shooting some species, and you might need to have some time off for yourself, so that like you can do a research and travel to that location and wait for that particular species to show up. But like if you are in general, if you want to shoot macro, you can do it in your backyard, or even you can do it on your own terrace garden or anywhere. That's a very easiest thing to do.
Perfect. So, guys, without any further delay, I want Uday to share his entire khazana with us. So without any further delay, guys, let's go into this presentation. And Uday, what's the story behind this presentation?
Yeah, Amit, I named this particular presentation as Dusk to Dawn. Okay, so it's like the species who are more active during the night compared to day, and so there are like the interesting fact is it's like two separate world. Okay, so the one when sun comes up, the day start for those species who are active during the day, and the second whole different world when the sun goes down. Okay, that is a different world altogether. So I was more fascinated about the nocturnal species than an day species, and there's in fact a reason for that. Okay, so I have a very sensitive eye. I really can't look at the bright light. Okay, so even I got tested my eyes couple of times, and I can really almost I can see everything very clearly even in very dark areas. So my eye is very sensitive to light. So that's why I was more active during the night, and then that's why like I was more keen to shoot the species who are active during the night, and that's how like my passion or love for the nocturnal species started altogether. So let me share my screen, and I think like I will start the presentation one by one. Okay, so Amit, hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, let me go to the first image.
So I would say your day starts with the croaking of the frogs.
Yes, absolutely. So this bush frogs, okay, they start their day early. Like for example, like how we start our day early at 5 or 6 in the morning. That's same way they start their day or night very early. They start when the evening starts somewhere around 6:37. They start croaking. This particular frog is called as Amboli bush frog. Okay, and they are like very commonly found in somewhere around I think Sirsi and in and around Sirsi. This was shot during somewhere around 7:30 in the evening.
So Uday,
Yes, sir.
in the evening we go looking for these frogs and we find them and we would like to get a similar photo with its sac open.
Yep.
But the moment you go near and try to shoot it, it stops croaking. How do you manage this?
Yeah, so they are bit sensitive to light. Okay, I would say because like when you trigger a torch light or something directly to them, they feel threatened and they try to stop croaking. Because the first thing is like croaking is can easily give their location to their predatory species. So that's why like when you fire a torch or something on the or the bright light on them, they stop croaking. Okay, so the best way is like they really can't identify the red color light. So I think like using a red light is one of the best way, and you might need to wait till the croaking reaches peak. Okay, so every frog they start croaking very slowly, and then they reach to a peak, and like once the peak is reached they will be there in the peak for around I think like 40 to 60 seconds, and then they stop croaking. So when the peak when they reach the peak, I think that is the best time you can approach them and take couple of shots. That's the way, and use almost like very dim light so that they don't get disturbed, and like they you can still focus and take a shot.
Thank
That's
you.
what like
Thank
at
you.
least I do.
Thank you, Uday.
So I'll go to the next image.
Yes.
Okay, so this is called as plant hopper. Okay, there are several species of different plant hoppers. They are all kind of like plant hopper nymphs. Okay, nymphs is when I say nymphs, they are the juvenile ones, and this one is very interesting. So they have a hair kind of tail, and if you see that like there is a different color altogether.
In fact, I can see some rainbow colors Uday, in that. It's a particular direction or the angle of light which creates that.
Absolutely, you are spot on, Amit. So this are like optical fiber optic cables, right? Like that's how they will be.
Yeah.
And when you use and diffuse light or from one particular angle, you can really see the rainbow color in that haze.
Wow.
And just for your reference, they are hardly in a size of a rice grain. Okay, they are not bigger than that.
Huh. It's a porcupine of the insect world.
You can say that. And they for that size, they skip very fast. Okay, they jump from one place to another place very fast. And like I think like size of the each jump is right, they are too huge. And it's once you lose them, it's almost like it's impossible to find them again.
Yeah.
This is again one more plant hopper. Okay, these are all very unique plant hoppers. Okay, they by their wing you can recognize or easily differentiate them from others, and they are specific to host. Okay, these are like they only feed on one particular or like one particular species of plant. So usually banana plant you have seen. So something similar to that. Only those species plants they feed on.
Yeah. Uday, in fact, when I saw this image for the first time, it doesn't look like a night shot. How did you manage with your light here? Because that entire leaf is beautifully illuminated.
Correct. Yeah. So this was shot using an diffused light from on-camera flash. Okay, and the thing is like this particular insect is very tiny. Okay, I had to use an Rhinox. Rhinox is nothing but an magnifying filter, which is placed in front of the your lens element. So that gives me somewhere around 2.5x magnification on an 100 mm lens. So when you are there in that close to subject, like this might be hardly 2 inch from the subject. So the size of the leaf is really big. For example, is a banana leaf, right? Like the f-stop, when I control the depth of field, the gradually you will get the blurry background and still flash reaches those points. So that's why like this looks like a day shot even though it's a night image.
Yeah, beautiful image. Beautiful.
Okay, this is another interesting fly. Okay, so this was shot during again somewhere around 10 or 10:30 in the night. And they have very interesting wing pattern. Okay, usually all the flies will have translucent or a transparent kind of wing, but this particular fly had the same body pattern and the color on its wing as well.
Okay.
Uday, I just love the diffusion in this image. Do you use a diffuser? What brand do you use? How do you manage the diffusion?
Yes, sir. So for this, I think like I'll have to give you bit insight on this. So I was not very sure on using the front light, okay, because I always felt that it kills the dimension of an image, even though it's a diffused light. What will happen is like the whole image becomes you will really lose the dimension. Then and at one point of time when I started using the Rhinox, so the Rhinox means you are on a higher magnification and you need higher f number to get the right depth of field. So that time I started using the external on camera flash to lit my subject properly. So then I was not happy with the result. Then I searched it over the net, and then I found that like there is a diffuser called as Beetle diffuser, which is made by one of my friend Varun. So it's a very useful tool to use when you want to lit the subject from front. So the diffusion will help you to bring out the natural colors, and it will help you to bring up the details to a great extent. So this was using the Beetle diffuser. I shot this image.
Thank you.
So Amit, you might be familiar with this species, right?
Yeah, man. I searched for almost 8 years, and last year, I could spot it in Goa because I think very rare species to spot, right? Today.
Correct. Exactly, Amit. So this is called as Malabar tree toad. Okay, and they are very, very interesting species. Okay, you can see them hardly for 15 days in the beginning of the monsoon, where like maybe June first week to around June 15th. That is the time they are very much active and they come out, and that is the breeding season for them, and they will be very, very common in Sirsi and in and around Sirsi area. So this shot I took near Sirsi. So, and after 15 days, they will literally vanish. Okay. And in fact, this time, even scientists had very little idea on their lifestyle and other things. So this time there was an people science initiative which was taken called as mapping the Malabar tree toad. Any individual like a photographer or a student or anybody, even with a mobile camera, if you take a shot, and there was an site where you can upload that photo and tag the location. Okay, they had reached somewhere, I think like a very good number on this particular initiative, and thankfully they got a very big project from to do more survey or more study on this particular species.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful image.
Right. Thanks, Amit. This is one very interesting, like this is called as, this is a species of a catadid, and this image I took primarily for the lighting. Okay, like so this was sitting on a leaf, and if you use the right angle light, you can just lit up the subject what you really want to lit up. So that was the whole point of taking this shot.
I just love your composition, Uday. May I know what is the light source you used on this?
This was using an off-camera flash, Mohan sir. So what I did is the off-camera flash was triggered from somewhere on the left-hand corner of the line. What you can see, the edge of the leaf, right? So it was just along the same leaf edge, so that only the edge part is lit, so that like you'll just see the curved line and along with the catadid. So nothing else is visible.
Can you please tell me what are the equipment you use? Your camera, your lens, or your flash?
Yeah, sure. I have two camera bodies as of now. Like one is Canon 5D Mark IV and another one is Canon 6D. Both are full frame cameras. And I use, from the lens point of view, for all my macro shots, I use Canon 100 mm. And for wide angle macro, I use Lowa 15 mm 1:1 macro lens. That's a wide angle macro lens. That's an amazing lens to use. Okay, but it's really difficult to use because it's a complete manual lens. So you need to set the aperture manually, you need to set the focus manually, everything manually, but it's a very, very creative lens to use. So, and when it comes to flash, I have two Godox flashes, which is and I use Godox trigger to fire them by using off camera mode. So this is what I use, and along with that, like I use a lot of different torches. Okay, so I can't forget them because like they are the best way to create dramatic light. So I use my camera bag always have 4 or 5 different types of torches.
Thank you.
This is, I think, like one of the most photographed frog from Western Ghat region. That's called as blue-eyed bush frog. Now it is called as Coorg yellow bush frog. So when I took this shot, I was really happy with the way it was sitting just on the edge of the leaf. And the best part of this image is like the pupils, what you can see, right? They are not closed. That means that like the light was not really scared the frog. That was the best part of this image.
So you mean to say, Uday, when you actually work with a macro subject, your first shots are very, very critical. You have to well prepared before you actually fire your first trigger or that first line, because after that they might have some kind of disturbance. So you
Exactly.
have to be very well prepared to take that first shot, because the first 5 shots will be the shots, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Amit. So I will just give you an insight what I do personally. So I really don't like to disturb them too much, okay, by firing hundreds of flashes and lights. So what I usually do is like I imagine a place where this frog is sitting or next to this really where it is sitting. I do all my camera settings and test shots on a blank leaf, okay, so that like I get almost 95% accurate settings and I don't have to shoot the first image and change the settings again and reshoot it. So that like I try to get a leaf which is something similar, like where the subject is sitting, and I try to compose the image. Sorry, I try to make all the settings and flash everything. And once I'm happy with the setting, so I will just aim at the frog or the subject what I want to shoot, and like with a very mild light to focus, get the focus right, and then I compose the image and I take the shot. This is the reason why I get most of my shots, like first shots, almost perfect.
That's a very, very interesting and very good tip, Uday. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Amit. No problem.
Wow.
So this is called as termite hill gecko. So this is the juvenile one, and you won't believe this was shot in Bangalore city. Okay.
Wow, that's great news, Uday. Even staying inside the city, you can actually shoot a lot of macro images.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely, sir.
where
That's
did you actually shoot this?
This was in somewhere near Banerghatta Road. One of my friend is having a farm there, so we were shooting spiders on that particular day, and it was late evening when we were coming back. This small fellow was just under an stone. Okay, they are more active during the night, so it was just under a stone. So and then when we tried to lift the stone, it just climbed onto a log. You can see the log just below where it is standing. So that's how I shot it. So since it is an juvenile one, and most of the juvenile things will have translucent kind of body. So what I did is I just placed my flash behind the log so that like I can get the translucent part of the body in a proper way.
So you used two flash, one from behind and one.
No, what I did is like I used one flash from behind, and just to make the eye visible, because as you know that like in any form of photography, if you are not able to see the eye of the subject in a proper way, then the whole image is not impactful, at least for me. So that's why what I did is I used an small torchlight to just to get the eye lit from the foreground, and one flash from behind to get the whole body lit in a proper way.
Just love the way you think, the way you plan the lighting.
So it's just an like I think like adapt and improvise. That is the best word I can tell for this, because like when I started shooting nocturnal species from the beginning, so even I used to fire the same kind of monotonous image, and then after one point of time, like you have to adapt to that situation and try to improvise yourself. So then I started thinking in a different way, that how can I make this image better. So else like what will happen is I'll be just documenting the subject instead of creating something called as your photo art, right? So when you say something as in photo art, so you as a photographer need to add the art element to that particular image. So that's how all this experiments with the light started.
Can you share some settings, except details on this image, please?
Yeah, definitely. So the thing is like what I do is when I'm using the flash, I will be shooting in complete manual mode, so that like I can get the exposure based on my requirement. and my flashes will be always in manual mode. Okay, I don't use them in TTL mode. I use them in manual mode, and I try to use the very low intensity light. Okay, so usually most of the time my flash will be on 1 by 1/28 of second the intensity, and on the aperture side I will go somewhere between 8 and 11 for these kind of shoots. Only if I'm using the magnifier like Rhinox, then I will have to go with the higher f number like f18 or 16, not beyond that, because like if you cross certain f number, then your camera will start producing the softer images. So usually my camera will not cross with between 8 and 11 aperture. And shutter speed I will decide based on the size of the subject, because like if it is a bigger subject, then you will need more light to lit the subject in a proper way. So then I will reduce the shutter speed somewhere not less than below 60, but like I will come up to 1 by 60th of a second to on the shutter speed level. ISO,
Okay,
yeah, go ahead, sir.
when you're shooting with Rhinox and
Yeah,
if your subject is small,
yeah.
uh, 16 aperture will not be enough. That's
Correct.
what
Yeah,
I felt.
that's absolutely true, sir. So the thing is, the best way to avoid the outfocus areas is to step back one step and then shoot. Okay. When, for example, if you are on a 2.5x magnification, then like when you are exactly on the 2.5x magnification, your the effective aperture will, I think there's a calculation for that. That will, with f16 or 18, you are not going to get the complete subject in focus. But if you reduce the magnification level to little bit, like imagine you are, instead of 2.5x magnification, you are at 1.5x magnification, you stepped one step back and then took the shot, your depth of field will increase very drastically. So that what I do is, like, today's cameras are capable of producing what, like 25 megapixel, 30 megapixel, 40 megapixel images. And even if you crop down 20% of the image, you still have the very much like almost like what, 20 megapixel to print, even if you are printing. And anyway, social media is your final output. It really doesn't matter. So even you can use the 6 megapixel image to put it in social media. So what I do is, I don't really go to that 1:1 magnification or to the greater magnification level. I'll just step back and take the shot so that the complete subject is in focus. And then if I need, I will definitely crop a bit. That's the whole point of having a higher megapixel, right?
Uday, it is a very interesting tip what you shared here, because a lot of people, when we talk about depth of field, we
Yeah,
just know about aperture values. But here
exactly.
you came out with one solution, that which is the focal distance. You are actually
Exactly.
changing your focal distance, you are stepping backward so that
Exactly.
you have that leeway in that depth of field. So again, a
Exactly.
very important tip, Uday. Thanks for sharing this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Amit,
Thank
in
you.
fact, there is one more thing, like what when you're talking about the depth of field, right? A lot of people uh, might be knowing this. So the thing is, it depends on a lot of things. It is not only the f number. So the difference or the distance between you and subject, and size of the subject and shape of the subject, your depth of field will differ when the subject is completely round, right? If it is a flat subject, then your depth of field will change, and along with that, even the way your depth of field behaves is completely different. And how parallel to your subject is also a very interesting thing to look at.
Absolutely. I think how parallel you to your subject is again a very important aspect in the macro photography, which I learned over a period of time.
Yeah,
And
that's very much true.
thank you, Uday, for bringing out these points. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Amit. Okay, this is again they are two different images. Okay, it's not on the same image from different angle, but like I put them together so that like it's the same phenomena which is happening. So this is called as molting. Okay, so every insect or every subject mold their skin on a regular basis. So the best part of this is a katydid. Okay, so they are molting. This molting usually takes place in somewhere start from around 10:30, 11 in the night, and it will go for an hour or 1.5 hour. So first they will hold the right twig. You can see that, like they I don't know how it will happen, but it's a very interesting thing. They always choose the right place to hold, okay, because like the grip should be so firm that they will have to break the skin and come out, and the whole body weight is just on that one particular point where it is holding. So they will do that. Once the molting is complete, they will start drying their wings and everything, and this is a really exhausting process. So they will lose a lot of energy for this, and once the molting process completes, they will eat that exoskeleton, okay. So this skin, they will completely eat that. I'm really not very sure whether it is only because of the energy what they burned, or it is possible that they want to avoid predators seeing the exoskeleton. That's a very interesting phenomena.
Yes.
Thank you.
This one is called as a flower mantis, and they are usually on they choose the flowers or the twigs which is almost something similar to their body color and pattern. This was shot using two different flashes.
Uday, in this particular image, I can see a light which is used from maybe a top, and you see a beautiful rim lighting on that twig along with the subject. But what is the secret of that beautiful, again, the rim light on the bottom of the twig?
So so that's what, like here I use two different flashes, Amit. So one flash from the, as you are rightly said, one from the right top corner, okay, to lit the subject and the top side of the twig, and one from the bottom left, which is just behind, like it's not exactly parallel to the twig, but little bit behind the twig, so that like I get that rim light even in the bottom part of the twig. So this is, the intensity will be bit different. So the thing is like uh, the top one was bit higher intense light compared to the bottom one.
Yeah, so the lighting ratios is what you normally play with, right?
Exactly. So even Amit, I just want to highlight, like I want to point one thing. Like a lot of people ask me the same question, like how do you do the lighting? Okay, but the fact is there is no one solution for every image. Okay, I really have no answer for that, because like it's not going to set one setting is not going to fulfill all your requirement. It based on the subject, the environment what you are in, and how much translucent that subject is, and all these things matter. So that's why like you will have to find your own right combination based on the each subject. Else I think like it's like setting one particular volume for all the all the songs, right? That's not going to work. Like based on your mood you have to change the volume. Like that's how it works.
True.
This is one of my favorite image which I shot somewhere near Sirsi.
I thought this
So
was a photoshopped image.
no, Mohan. So rain is one thing which is an I would say it comes with its own disadvantages when you consider your camera equipment getting wet or the fungus, all these things. But it can give you amazing result. Okay, you, if you are creative enough, you can really create something amazing when it is raining. So this was shot during one rainy night, and this is hardly this mushroom is not bigger than 2 inch. Okay, so I was lying on the ground, and I used only torchlight, two torchlight here, one to lit the mushroom and the bark which is there, what you can see in the below, and one to lit the raindrops. Okay, so that's why you can see the raindrops which is falling as in white dots throughout the screen, and then one light to lit the mushroom.
Uday, how many hands do you have when you actually take this kind of photograph?
No, but I one of Mohan sir, even Mohan sir met him. So I have one of my cousin who comes with me most of the times. He is not a photographer, but he is very good company when you go out in the field. Okay, like me and him, we sit and discuss about the future images, what we really like to create, right? Like when you want to create an art, it's not going to happen overnight, and you will plan your shots, what you want to shoot, and what you expect in your frame. And in fact, like there are some images which took us almost like 1.5 years to get the final output. It's not
So
going
you
to be
mean to say you visualize the image in your mind much
exactly, sir.
ahead of you getting it.
Exactly, sir. We sometimes like it might look or like it might sound funny, but like we draw that on paper, like how we want, what subject, which direction, what will be the surroundings, and how it should look, and like we draw each and everything. We write it, and like then we plan that shot, and then we think about like which is the possible location where we can get this kind of shots. Like it takes lot of homework, like a lot of visualization, and like then you might be able to create
And
that
how
particular.
long does it take to get that image?
So I have one image or two images which literally took almost 1.5 years to create that. So that's how it is.
So nowadays, anybody going for a macro shoot or even a wildlife photography, they would like to get as many images as possible in one trip.
Yeah.
But seeing your image, if you get one image or two image in an entire trip, you will be happy.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. You are spot on. Like my expectation from a trip is three is the best number for me.
Oh,
Okay, so I really don't expect anything more than three. So but like I expect, like if I'm having two images, I'm kind of okay, but if I get three images from one trip, I am absolutely happy. I don't expect anything more than that.
so the message to the viewers, what you say is, don't get 100 images, but get couple of class images. Is that
Yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely, sir. Actually, there are two different ways of photographing thing, I would say. Like, so if you are photographing for the documentation purpose, then I think like you just try to get the as much as species possible. But like when you are working as an photo artist or an creative photographer, then I think like everything is just not, number is not the whole point, right? Like you need to have an really an amazing output, or at least you should be really happy with what the output you got. Like I'm, at least when it comes to me, I'm really not for the social media kind of guy. But like if I feel happy, or if I'm able to create what is there in my mind, I'm happy. That's what my funda is.
But what I feel is that even if you are happy, your partner is not happy who accompanies you.
Yeah, exactly. So in fact, Amit, you have not met him. Definitely I will make you meet him someday, and he is a very good critic. Okay, so the thing is, he is not a photographer. He doesn't even lift my camera. But like when we go together, if you are able to satisfy him with an image, then your job is done.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
that's how it is.
Uday, looking into your images, all those fantastic shots. I think for me, macro, if you want to do a creative lighting, you need to have a good buddy.
Yeah,
It's a team game, because alone you can't shoot. You can't just compose. You can't hold the flash. You hold the torch. So it's better to have team up with someone, and then you plan your shoots. A team of two or three will be always a fantastic thing when you want
definitely.
to create this kind of images.
Yeah, definitely. Team of two or three like-minded people, I would say. Okay, who is like who thinks something similar to you, or like the same way you visualize. I think that's the most key thing. And for at least for this stationary subjects, I think like you can do it by your own. But for an moving subject or an insect, so it's really difficult. Okay, I have done it alone for several subjects. I think like I'll show you some more. So but those things are really difficult. Okay, sometimes like you might need to spend 3-4 hours just running behind one subject, because by the time you set your flash, torch, everything, subject just changes its angle. So then your whole exercise will start from the scratch again. That's a very, very genuine point.
And in this image, I think you have used more than one light, right?
It's two lights, sir. One torch to lit the mushroom, and one torch to lit the rain which is falling.
Okay.
This is again Amboli bush frog. I would say that the movement was not really intended. Okay, so the thing is like I was shooting, just it was sitting on the this down portion here. I was just, because I really loved the way this twig was going up. So I always like to portray my images which is climbing up, which it's hardly you will see anything which is coming down. So, but I don't know what is the reason, but I feel something positive about facing towards up. So I was just shooting that, like thankfully this frog started to move. Frog, it's a juvenile one, so that's why you can see the translucent body and even the internal organs here.
It's the same Amboli bush frog, right?
Yes, yes, Amit. It's a juvenile Amboli bush frog. This one is called as large scale lizard. This I shot in Munnar last year. So this was completely shot with two torchlight. That's it. One from the front and one from the back.
So when you say torchlight, do you do any changes in your settings?
Yes, there are two things, Mohan sir. One is like when you use torchlight. So most of the torchlight will give you a pointed light. Okay, so you need to spread that light. Okay, so that's why like sometimes I use handkerchief, or like any if somebody is wearing a white color or a bright t-shirt, I sometimes bounce the torchlight through the t-shirt and this kind of thing. And on the camera setting, yes, we need to go bit higher on the ISO front, because like your light will not be sufficient to it is not camera is not that sensitive to light. So that's why like I intentionally increase the sensitivity of the sensor by 1 or 2 stops. So that's the one thing. And like on the depth, like f value as well as on the shutter, it's not much different, like maybe 1/60th of a second shutter as well as the aperture. One thing you need to understand, the temperature of the light which is coming from the torchlight. Based on that, you need to set the white balance, because each torchlight will come with a different temperature. Okay, when you say in the Kelvin, so the LED torches are, some of them are towards the blue or the cooler temperature, some of them will be towards the higher temperature like yellowish or orangish tone. So that's what, like, you need to understand the torch, what temperature it is, and based on that, like, you need to set the uh, Kelvin on your camera, white balance in your camera to compensate that.
It's a very important point to the white balance, because whenever you use torch, I think you need to set your white balance right.
Exactly, Amit. I always go with the manual white balance. Like I don't use any of the custom white balance, or like the predefined white balance. I go with the Kelvin. Like I usually set the Kelvin for each image. Like it's the same thing. Like it's not one size doesn't fit for all. That's the funda.
What is the highest ISO value you go when you go with the torchlight?
Not more than 800, because at least my camera 5D Mark IV will perform really well up to 800. I really did not go beyond that, because like on a brighter day it's completely fine. Okay, when you have a lot of shadows and highlights, so the noise will be very much visible. So that's why like I don't really go beyond 800.
Do you change the metering also for this?
Sometimes, sir, like because like if I really want to lit up the line and other things, like then I go to spot metering. And if I want to compose the image and have a proper lighting throughout the frame, in this kind of scenario, I wanted the surroundings also in the same lit value on, if you see the branch what is there. So in these kind of scenarios, I take evaluative metering.
Thank you.
Yeah. These are all two different species molting. Okay. The left one, what you see is a dragonfly. What it's molting, and the right one is cicada. So I think like right one, lot of people might have shot this something similar image. And the interesting fact is on the dragonfly, they as a larva they spend their almost complete life underwater. Okay, and when they feel that it's the time to change their life form to dragonfly, and they come out of the water, and they try to hold a twig which is suited for their size, and then they break the shell and come out of that the skeleton. Okay, and this I recently even made a time lapse video on this, and it really came out well. The whole process took somewhere around 2.5 hours to 3 hours. And on the right hand side, what you're seeing is an cicada. So cicadas are very interesting creatures. Okay, they spend most of their lifetime under the mud. Okay, they will not come out, and once they are ready to change the life form, and they want to mate and continue their life journey, so they will come out. And it's I read it in somewhere that like there are some species of cicadas, they will live up to 75 years underground. Okay, it's not for India, but like I think like somewhere in the US subcontinent. So they like US and as well as I think like South American continent, they live up to I think like 70-75 years underground. That's a very interesting thing.
Indeed, an interesting fact.
And if you see that like on the when they emerge, I mean like they will have a bluish kind of blood. Okay, so the blood will have more copper content, and as it gets contacted with the oxygen which is there in air, so the oxidization happens and the blood color changes.
And that's why you see that blue
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. So that's the reason why you see the initial stages of the molting, they will have very blue color blood throughout their veins, and then gradually as it dries, so the color will change.
The cicada molting happens usually which part of the year?
It's during monsoon. I have seen them majorly monsoon. I think like, but there are some species who will molt throughout the year. But like the majority of them will come during sometime between June and I think like August. That's the time when they are more active. I have seen them start the molting process from somewhere around 7 in the evening, and like even I have seen them molting at somewhere around 1 in the night.
Great piece of knowledge.
Oh, thank you, sir. Amit, now I already told you about everything about lighting. Now you have to tell me whether from where the light is coming, whether it is one lizard or two.
Yeah, surprisingly, whenever we go out and when we are friends together, everyone wants to create this kind of that shadow kind of thing, no? If I guess it correctly, Uday, the light is from top behind.
Exactly. You are spot on, Amit.
Okay. But Uday, tell me one thing. Now, since we talk about macro, where you would focus? You would focus on the shadow part because there is a distance between the shadow which is on the leaf and the subject is slightly away from it, you know. So where
Correct.
one should focus it?
So I try to focus on the eye of the subject, Amit. I really don't go for the shadow.
Okay.
And then that's the reason why metering comes into picture. Okay, so when you are not really focusing on the shadow or something like, then you will have to play with metering. So that's why like you will get the right exposure on the whole image. So but I always focus on the eye of the subject, because like for me, eye is the most important part in an image.
Yeah. Uday, the most beautiful thing I like about this image is the way you use not a single leaf, but all the combination of three leaves together. And you know, for me, I mean, it's very easy on the bottom leaf. You just patch that thing in the Photoshop and you get up and make it more beautiful. But what I respect you for that is you did a very least amount of that post process, and you shoot the things as they come in nature.
Yeah, that's very much true, Amit. So I am not against post processing, definitely, but what I feel is like as an artist or a photographer, you need to do most of your job in camera. That's what I feel. Yes, there are limitations to your camera which really camera can't do, but that need to be adjusted in post processing. But like that's the nature, right? Like the hole on the leaf is really nature. So it's nature is never perfect in all the possible way, or like when it comes to beauty. So that's why like I love to keep it as it is. Like I really don't want to remove anything from my frame. So that's how I love to see my image. uh this one is in a an interesting image, at least, which is very close to my heart. There's an Malabar pit viper which shot during sometime night, and it was really pouring. Okay, like the rain was so heavy, and I was trying to get an image where the raindrop is falling from just below the jaw of the snake. And then what happened when I was shooting, I saw an water droplet which is falling from a tree on the head of the snake, and it's splashing. So that time I was really amazed, and like I wanted to capture that particular frame. And you won't believe, I waited for 50 minutes without even taking my eye from viewfinder and my finger from the trigger button. And I made all the flash setting, everything ready, and from different angle to get the right amount of light within the splashing water droplets, everything. And then it was just a waiting game. And in 50 minutes it happened three times. Okay, once it fell on the eye of the snake, I missed that shot. And the second was just below the head, behind the head. Okay, sorry, not below the head, behind the head, somewhere here. And that was not very pleasing. And the third shot was exactly on the head, and one drop splashed. That's it. That was the whole shot for the day. That was just amazing.
Okay. Uday, again, a technical question.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You use autofocus or you go with a manual focus?
Uh, See, autofocus. I prefer autofocus, Amit, because like when your subject is moving around, okay, and your camera is not mounted on a tripod because your hand moves just front and back. Okay, so you need to be that accurate on if you are on a manual focus. So
Okay.
because what will happen, even your slight body shake, 1 inch body shake from front to back, will completely, you will lose the focus.
Yeah.
So that's why like with, I think like native lenses and for example, like as I told, I use Canon. If I'm using a Canon lens, I never felt that the focusing is a problem. So I always got the focus right, and my camera and the lens sticks to the focus in a very fast way. I never felt that particular requirement. But only thing is like you need to have a slight light where you can using that you can focus the subject.
Okay. Now, macro photography, the subjects are very dynamic. The
Yeah,
insects are moving all around. The frogs are
yeah,
talking. They are moving.
yeah,
But some subjects, like molting shots or
yeah.
your pit vipers, normally they wait for their prey. So they are there. They don't move much.
Correct.
Do you use tripods in such case where you just set up your camera on a tripod and you go for the shot?
Yes, I use tripod for most of the shot, Amit, because like I don't know, like I might be an old school guy. So where the initial stages I was told to use the tripod, and I got used to that using the tripod. Okay, because and sometimes what I do is like I don't know if others will do or not, but I use a lot of live focus, like live view
Right.
mode in macro photography to get the exact focus on the eye. Okay, so because I sometimes I put my camera on the tripod and then I put it into live view, and you have an magnifying option in the live view, right? Like I go to 10x magnification and fine tune the focus to exactly to the eye, and then I take the shot. That's what I follow.
Thank you.
Uday, for the safety of all macro photographers,
Yeah.
what is the safety measure that you will suggest when you are shooting snake, especially snakes?
uh, Sir, I would say that like you maintain your safe distance. Okay, as even if you take any genre of wildlife photography, right, like whether it is tigers, leopard, so you maintain your distance from the subject. So the same thing need to be maintained in every photography. See, the thing is, yes, of course, I do agree that we need the best possible shot what we can get, but we always need to understand that we are taking the shot of a wild animal. Okay, so we are entering their habitat and their home. They need not, you don't have any right to disturb them. You just go and maintain your distance, take in shot. Okay, so even just because you did not get the right shot, you can't really disturb them. So I think that as a photographer, when you evolve, I think that comes it comes to you on an as you go. So initially people will think that, like, for example, like I have seen a lot of people lifting the snake and putting them on an best perch and then shooting. Okay, that is the initial stages of photography. But like as you go now, at least where I am standing as a photographer, I try to think, how can I make the image beautiful wherever the snake is sitting. Okay, it's not that like I want to keep the snake on a beautiful perch and shoot it, but I try to find a way where how can I make it beautiful and show it to my viewers wherever it is sitting without disturbing it. I think like for a snake, it's better to use even if you're not comfortable with 100 like, or you can use even 70 to 100, you will, because subjects are pretty big, and you can maintain your distance of 3 or 4 feet from them.
Do you suggest having one more person because when you are shooting, you might not be so attentive
Exactly. Yeah.
towards
That's
the
it.
snake's movements.
Yeah.
So, do you suggest that you have one more person who will be watching the subject more intently,
Yeah.
whether they are about to attack or any such thing?
Yeah, definitely, sir. That's a very good point. So yes, like I always go with the local guide, or who is very fond of that, or like who understand that forest very well, and who know the species of that local region. Okay, so they will be knowing their behavior in a best possible way, because like, see, for example, like if you want to shoot a large scale pit viper, so if you go to that terrain, and you as a photographer who is, even though I am from Western Ghat, I might not really know the behavior of that snake. So that's why it is always recommended to have somebody who knows about that subject. And when you are looking through your viewfinder and you start getting some good images, you go to a next level. Okay, you really your adrenaline will kick off, and like then you really don't think what is happening in the front. So that's why it's always recommend to have somebody who can tell you that whether you are maintaining the safe distance, or like if there is any change in the behavior of the snake. That's a very good point, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
This one is a mayfly. And Mohan sir, now can you tell me what kind of lighting I might have used?
You have used top light and the torch light for that.
Exactly, sir. So this was shot using one torch to lit the leaf which is there below, so that like I get a very soft light on the leaf, and the other torch which was used from the top to just to lit the subject. So this was shot using two torchlight, and so what the dots you can see here, they are from a spider web. Okay, the water droplets sitting on a spider web.
I think the attention to details is
Yeah.
so very good there.
Yeah.
And the beauty is that since you haven't disturbed and you try to shoot them in the natural habitat, you get a lot of other elements which are complementing to your that composition. No?
Correct, correct.
That is the beauty of it.
Yeah. So Amit, when it comes to this particular macro photography, or any genre of photography, see our eye will not see only that mayfly, right? Like you have seen, when you look from the natural point of view, you have seen several leaves which is there in and around that mayfly. Even the spider web is there. They're all natural. How much you want to show it to your viewers is up to you as a photographer. See, because there is this mayfly isn't hardly what, like 2 centimeter or one and a half centimeter long one. So, but in nature it's just a very tiny thing, but like you can project it as an mayfly as only one subject throughout the frame, or how much you want to include in your frame is comes as a photographer. You need to decide that. Like that's what is the composition, right?
True.
These two images like are one I shot it on the left hand. One is majorly to tell that you can break the composition rule. Okay, so the thing is like this is dead center of the frame, and still if you see that the symmetry of the line and on the leaf, as well as the wings of the dragonfly, that's what made it very interesting. So I used one flash from the back and one from the side to lit the subject.
And the others are the spider babies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very interesting story. I called it as small migration. Okay. So what happened is like this was shot somewhere around, I saw this phenomena happening at somewhere around night 11:30 in the night. And they were just hatched spiderlings. Okay, so there are two portion. One is just below down part, and what you see here, the line, and just below there was a huge group of spiderling which hatched there, and there was one more group on the top side. Okay, so what their mother used to do is like every time, like she used to come down and there are some 10 or 15 spiderlings will follow her. She'll go to the top clutch and all of them will go and stay there, and she comes back alone, and then again the next set of spiderling will follow her. This I hardly took couple of images of the whole process, but like I really observed it for three and a half hours, because there was thousands of spiderlings, but it was very interesting to watch.
And the most beautiful part about this image, Uday, the way you compose it is exactly diagonal, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So avoid composing straight, tweak, rather the diagonal gives a very powerful composition.
You
yeah,
can add a,
definitely.
you can add a caption also. Find the odd man out.
No, in fact, Mohan sir, I took that like I had couple of other images, but I took that particular frame where it had one odd out, because else like people will think that I might have copy and pasted this insect like spiderlings, right? But like since one is odd, that creates the interesting frame overall. This is another plant hopper. So this is with the backlit image, and they come in different shapes and sizes. Okay, the interesting pattern on their behavior, and if you see them from very closely using an Rhinox or in high magnification, then you will know that where Hollywood gets all the inspiration to create aliens. Okay, so they have very different different body structures.
Uh, Uday, you did mention about the Renox, you know, for your
Yeah,
2.5x magnification.
correct.
Have you ever used extension tubes?
Yes, I did use extension tube. Okay, and they have one limitations I felt. Okay, from the sharpness point of view, I really did not feel any difference compared to Rhinox or extension tubes. But like extension tube is mounted on your camera body, and then you have to mount your lens on that. So, but Rhinox is just a clip-on kind of filter. You can remove it any point of time. So the best part with Rhinox is like imagine you are in a high magnification and shooting something, and the next frame you want to shoot it in a wider way and with 1:1 magnification or an less than that. So then you don't have to change the lens or like remove the converter and like or the extension tube and then mount the lens back again, right? That option, that problem is not there with Rhinox. The sharpness wise, even Rhinox as well as extension tube, I found it like almost similar.
Yeah, thank you.
This one is again, this in fact, I shot it a couple of weeks back when I was there at Sirsi. This is called as Jog Night Frog. Okay, they are from Nitibatricus species. And this is the egg, like what you see here on the top, as well as just below The frog is, they are eggs, okay, egg sacs. So the female will lay the egg, and male will come and sit on the egg and guard it. That's what. And along with that, even it's giving the mating call, so that the next female can come and they can lay the next set of eggs here. And interesting thing is, like, the female will have two clutches of eggs, like one on the right hand side, on one on the left hand side. Usually they will have 7 on the left side, 7 eggs, and 7 on the right hand side. And one day they will usually lay 7 eggs, and the next day the next 7 will be laid. That's a usual scenario, but there are exceptions where the female will lay all 14 eggs in one shot.
And they fall into the stream or water body below.
Yeah, exactly. They lay the eggs in such a way that water is always splashing to them. Okay, it's not literally submerged in water, but like they lay to the next to and fast flowing stream kind of thing, where the water is splashing and it's somehow keeping these eggs moist, like, so that like the eggs will not become dry and they will die. So when the egg is ready to hatch, okay, so these things will fall from the egg and they will directly reach water. That's how they lay the egg. This one I shot it somewhere during the midnight. I think, like, if I'm not wrong, somewhere around 2 in the night. And this green vine was sleeping. Okay, so they usually, if you are familiar with the night world, they usually take a rest or shelter on an plant or a leaf. So that's how they sleep. And this was sleeping. I wanted to create just the line, okay, not anything else, just to give the essence of the line and the shape.
Can I know what light you use for this?
Yeah. So Mohan sir, this was shot using one torch light, okay, from this corner. So it was somewhere little bit down, so that the light is very thin here and it's bit thick here. So that's how I used it. And one mobile torch to just to lit the eye of the eye on the shadow side, so that like the people can feel the eye even on the shadow side.
Beautiful.
Looks very artistic in monochrome.
Yeah. Thanks, Amit. So looks like we are almost reaching the end of my presentation. So this is the last shot which I shot somewhere in the dusk. Okay, so it was almost 5 in the morning when I shot this frame. So this is the Malabar pit viper, which is sitting and waiting for the prey to come. This is the natural. I just wanted to show how they sit and wait in their natural habitat. I just took a couple of shots like this.
Wish we could get all these frames in one single night.
Yeah, that's too much to expect, Mohan sir. I think like nature doesn't provide that way, right?
I definitely know how many years it took for you
Yeah.
to get this many. Uday, other than your camera equipments that you mentioned, what are the other things that you carry when you go on a trip?
So most of the time, like there are few things which I really don't miss. Okay, one is like number of torches. Okay, like as you know, some of my images, like without torches, my images are not complete. So I will have at least 4 or 5 different torches which will be there in my bag, and I carry some anti-allergic medicines. Okay, because I am very much attracted to, or like ticks are more attracted to me. So that's why like I'll have a lot of tick bites. So that's why I carry some anti-allergic medicines. And then along with that, like I carry rain gears. So for myself as well as camera, and one big umbrella, because like you don't know how much time you need to wait when you mount your camera on a tripod. So that's why I make sure a couple of umbrellas are always there in my car. So I carry them. And yeah, that's most of it, Mohan sir.
And of course, I think you must be carrying a gumboot.
Yeah, see, gumboot is very much mandatory when you are going into rainforest, because like, see, most of the snakes are really not, you can't identify them, okay, when you step on, and you should be very careful. so that like when you have a gumboot, you are sure that like nothing is going to happen, because most of the snake fangs will not penetrate the gumboots. That's why yes, I do carry gumboots and water bottle. That's a very primary thing. Like I don't really leave my water bottle.
Yeah.
And regarding leech, do you take any protection or you just?
No, Mohan sir. I really don't take any protection for leech, because when you have gumboots and raincoat covered, so at least they don't get into your legs. So, but on the neck, yes, you do get some bites. That's common. Like I don't really like to put anything like the very harsh smell or something to avoid leech, but I really don't do it. And I don't have much problem with leech, so that's why I'm not very scared about them.
So, Uday, thank you so much, man, for sharing all the knowledge. For me, it's lights, camera, and action. Because why they say now I realize lights, camera, and action. Lights are equally important with your camera and your lenses. This is what I learned from your style of photography. Second thing, Uday, I mean, what I learned actually from while interacting with you is that normally we end our sessions around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, post dinner. We end our macro trips and we come back. But I think what I learned from you is with the macro and the right month, right location, you can shoot the entire night, the whole night.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it is my wish, it's a request today. At least we will create one beautiful video for all our viewers here. And I'm planning for a theme, like, it is from the dusk to dawn.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to film you doing the entire those 10, 12 hours, shooting and searching for the insects and shooting.
It's
So
not going to be easy for you, Amit.
I know it's tough, but definitely I'll try my level best. I'll
Yeah,
try
yeah.
my level best.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, Uday. Thank you, Mohan sir. Very enlightening session, Uday. And guys, I'll tell you, those who wanted to learn more on the macro photography, on the lighting, uh, Uday also takes some one-on-one classes. If you wish to join him, I'll share his Instagram handle, his Facebook in the link in the description. So you can always approach him. And Uday, thanks once again for joining us. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Amit and Mohan sir, for this wonderful opportunity. I'm really honored to be here. Okay, and guys, please subscribe, share, and like this video, and don't forget to click that bell button to get the regular updates. Okay.
Okay. So thank you, Uday, for this wonderful presentation, your time. And thank you, Amit, for this episode. Until next time we meet, bye.